Hi, Misha here. And I was thinking, I've done quite a few pistols recently, and rifles, but haven't really had a shotgun video in a couple of months. And we've covered this gun before, but when I look back, we've never really had a dedicated video for the Benelli M2. And this seemed like quite a good time because just received in a batch of 2021, so current production, Benelli M2 LE editions. I believe the part number is 11041. This is about as tactical as this gun gets. So, thought we would talk about features, how it relates to the M1, M3, and M4, and yeah, just give the M2 its moment in the spotlight because, yeah, it's usually the M4 around here, sometimes the M3, but not the M2 and M1, and that's a shame because this is really where it all began many, many moons ago in Italy. And before we get going, I just would request that you please like, share, and subscribe. Also, please feel free to comment because that really helps the almighty algorithm. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out the link to our Patreon page. And with that, less rambling, more shotgunning. The M2 is a self-loading semi-automatic shotgun manufactured in Italy by Benelli Army, SP. Today owned by Beretta. It fires 12 gauge, 2 3/4, and 3-inch Magnum, and has a shell capacity anywhere from 3 out to a total of 8, as on this model here. Barrel lengths range from a 14-inch SBS to an 18-inch like this one, up to hunting guns 20, 24, and so on. Sight options can be bead or rifle, but you actually see these quite frequently, often with the ghost ring adjustable sights. Buttstocks, I've never seen an M2 with a collapsible stock. You see the M3s and M4s, but the M2s seem to have the fixed stock. You can find it with the pistol grip here, or you can find a field stock with a semi-pistol grip, still polymer, or you can even find these with wood furniture in the hunting models. And they have kind of an all-weather finish. The receiver is made out of a lightweight but still durable aluminum alloy, and the barrel is steel with, I believe these are chrome lined. Could be wrong on that. And it has standard Benelli controls. Here's our current box. It will come disassembled with the barrel up here. You get a very thick manual over here that's going to keep flopping down. I'll set you down for a second. Here are our accessories. We have a oil bottle with applicator. We have a tool that serves a couple of purposes, but mainly it's there to remove and install chokes. The inside of these barrels are threaded, and this particular model comes with a total of 3. Yeah, there is 1 in the gun, so yeah, the 1 in the gun plus 2 additional. So, you know, it's kind of nice that you get a little bit of extra with this. Not a huge amount, but yeah. So let's talk a bit about the features and history and what separates the M1 from the M2. The Benelli company began with shotguns. Well, sort of. It actually began as a motorcycle company with 2 brothers, coincidentally, with the last name of Benelli. But when they moved into firearms, they started with shotguns. They became interested in the 60s and kind of progressed through the 70s. And then in the 80s, they worked on and patented this system. I believe it was around 1983. They were sports shooters and hunters, and really had quite an affinity for shotguns. This is an inertia-driven system, or agitated recoil. Most previous models of self-loading shotgun used a piston, usually like an annular piston around the magazine tube or elsewhere. The Benelli system is much simpler than that. It simply has a, I can show you here, rotating head. There's a small spring behind the head that lets it recoil back and rotate, and then there's a carrier behind that with kind of a rat's tail that goes into a major recoil spring in the buttstock. This is why these really can't have folding stocks, although you potentially can put a collapsing stock on one. Very simple system, no pistons to get in the way, fewer parts. Fewer parts can mean very reliable. Release here. Show lifter down here. But also, especially for sports shooters and tactical users, this is a very fast system. It'll pretty much fire as quickly as you can pull the trigger. A lot of gas piston shotguns, there's a bit of a delay because you have a very large projectile, very large cartridge being cycled through the action. So there are definitely some advantages. Another advantage is weight, not having a piston system out here and everything. These are quite light shotguns, and this is furthered by the aluminum alloy receiver, something that I oft repeat, but the Remington 870 crowd says that the Remington is better than the Mossberg because the Remington has a steel receiver and the Mossberg alloy. The problem is Benellis are extremely well regarded, and they have alloy receivers too. The truth of the matter is that the bolt doesn't lock into the receiver. It actually locks in to the barrel extension up here, which is of course steel. So the receiver, it's just pretty much holding stuff in place. Big release here. And there's a stop here. Sorry guys. Easier to do when you're pointed the right direction. That locks it closed. We have a cross bolt safety here. Standard trigger guard, what have you. You know, Benelli controls have not changed a whole lot. So when this was introduced, it was originally the M1 Super 90. And the M2 is just a simple update of that. The M1 is kind of famous because in the US it was imported by HK for a time. So these kind of got the reputation of being HK guns. But they were made in Italy by Benelli. And like I said, that was purchased by Beretta in the 80s, which is actually why Beretta makes a version of this under its own in-house brand name. Some other features, we have sling swivels on both sides of the stock. We have a rubber recoil pad. You can put recoil reduction systems in here. Like I said, you can also buy with the Comfortech stock. The ghost ring is fully adjustable. We have a receiver that's drilled and tapped for rails or rings. Synthetic forearm. This is the full-length tube. It has a 7+1 capacity in 2 3/4 and a 6+1 and 3-inch magnum. We have a barrel clamp here, lifted front sight. So those are the features. More importantly though, how does it shoot? Well, I have some footage from before, so let's toss it up and then talk about the pros and cons of this system and shotgun. Benelli M2. As I said, these can be fired very quickly. Dare I say, even bump fired. They are also quite reliable. They can handle quite a wide range of shells, although they prefer 3-inch Magnum for recycling the inertia system. If you shoot lighter 2 3/4, make sure you tuck this up against your stock to give it a stable kind of backstop to recoil against. If you do that, it'll be quite reliable. So that's the good. The bad, especially with Magnums, it does have a bit of a recoil to it. It does have a bit of a kick. And that's because the inertia system doesn't bleed off some of the energy like a piston system. It all pretty much goes back into you. Yeah, you have a spring to kind of dampen it, but not as much as a piston would. On top of that, this is a light shotgun. That's great for carrying it around as an issue gun, a duty gun. It's only about 6.5 to 7 pounds depending on the model. That's very light for a 12-gauge shotgun. It's also, this model, under 40 inches long, even with a fixed buttstock. So yeah, it's slim and trim, good for carrying around, but it's not something you probably want to shoot all day long. That said, a lot of people do use these for 3-gun and other competitions, so, I guess you toughen up. And as I said at the beginning of the video, this is the LE version. So what makes it LE? With Benelli's M4, LE means you get the collapsible buttstock, ghost ring sights, either a 14 if it's an SBS or 18-inch barrel, and extended 6+1 magazine. For the M2, you get essentially the standard stock, you get the ghost ring sights. The major difference is really just it comes with the 7+1 tube. This is actually a little bit longer because of the system. It has an open-ended cap, which means it has a little bit more space than the M4 would. Also, at least with these newer ones, you have an enlarged release here and a very large and long bolt cocking handle. Quite nice, actually. So not all Benelli M2s have that. Speaking of M2, what makes this different from the original M1? Frankly, not a whole lot. Around 2004, the M2 first appeared. In 2005, the M1 disappeared from Benelli's catalog. But don't worry, there wasn't a major difference. Essentially, this is an M1. All they did, they made a few changes to how they manufactured the barrel, kind of updating for newer technology. They revised the magazine tube just a little bit. A few other internal tweaks and changes. And probably most noticeably, they went to a different, more ergonomic forearm handguard. So yeah, the M2 is just a 21st century version of the M1. Not really much to write home about, but it's nice that Benelli continues to update the design. So if you hear people talking about how an HK imported M1 Super 90 is superior, no, not really. And Benelli does officially classify this as a Super 90, much as it does the M3 and M4. Benelli M2.
Clear.
And here it is with a couple of other members of the family. This is the Pump Supernova Law Enforcement. And of course, you knew I had to bring out my M4, at least for a cameo. Just wouldn't seem right otherwise. But yeah, these all kind of derive from the same family. Now, not too long ago, I did a video, well, maybe a couple of years now. Anyway, M4, M2, which Benelli's right for you. And I talk about the pros and cons. Well, the M1 was updated to the M2. They're really the same. The Supernova here is a pump, but it still has the same kind of Benelli aesthetic going on, the tube style. And it uses actually the same 5-position collapsing stock is the M3. Now the M3 was introduced to kind of bridge the two. It's essentially an M1, M2, but with the option, with a selector switch up front, to turn it into a pump shotgun. It also has more of a polymer frame than the M2. But most of the time you would probably shoot the M3 as a self-loader because it uses the inertia system to drive. But just in case, the M3 can be used as a pump. And I have done a video on that, so you can check that out. The M4, well, that was Benelli's attempt, successfully as it turned out, to get the military contract for a self-loading shotgun. Famously used by the Marines, it's actually used by all branches. It's the Joint Services Combat Shotgun. They started with the M1, M2, basically keeping the spring-loaded rotating bolt head, even keeping the main recoil spring in the stock, giving it first a 2, later a 3-position collapser. But for the military, they changed up the front end. They went to a new tube system that has a screw cap on the end, whereas this doesn't. This has just an open end. More of a military tube. Oh, look, here. Deal with it later. A little bit of carpeting got caught in there. Sorry, just noticed. But, yeah, they updated it for the military. And while they kept the inertia system, they also added 2 stainless steel gas pistons under this here handguard for even better reliability. So, you know, like you do. It is heavier. Still has an alloy receiver, by the way. It is heavier, therefore less felt recoil. It does have a gas system, therefore less felt recoil. However, it is quite a bit more expensive to manufacture and a lot more expensive to purchase than the M2. On top of that, the M2 is, like I said, lighter and a little bit handier. The M4 is beefed up for military service and has been adopted by more than just the U.S. military. The M1 and M2, on the other hand, really haven't seen much military use, at least widespread, but they have seen a lot of police department use and other, law enforcement government agency use. And this is a great police shotgun because very low maintenance, very easy to field strip and clean. You can just throw it in the trunk and not worry. There's not much to corrode because of the alloy receiver and synthetic furniture. Very forgiving ghost ring sights. And if you have to carry it on patrol, 6.5 to 7 pounds is a lot better than 8 pounds for the M4. So this is more of a police shotgun. It also might make for a better home defense type shotgun too. Just kind of depends where you're coming from there, frankly. But like I said, this has never really had its day in the sun for its own video, so I thought, today's the day. Why not? Now, I previously did own an M2 with the extension. That's the one you saw being fired from the clips. But I did sell it during the COVID panic just because people were really begging for shotguns, and so it and a Nova went away. I kept my Supernova just because I really like it. Here they are with the stocks all collapsed up. This kind of shows you how much length you're saving on each one. A little bit, but not a dramatic amount. Control-wise, they're all very similar, with the safety being a little different on the pump, of course. You can note the kind of original size handle and release here on the M4. And I do like the large and oversized controls on this M2. That is nice. I also like this handguard shape. The M4 is a little bit different shape because it has to have the gas piston housed inside. Now the M2, much like the M1 before it, will serve you very well if you decide to pick one up. They are very good shotguns. very high quality for what they are. And that's kind of what Benelli has made their name on. Even though they've tried to get into handguns and rifles a little bit. Yeah, they're known for their shotguns. And this gun here is kind of the first batch to come in 2021. And it is wonderful to see guns coming out of Italy again after last year and how all that went. I did also receive some M4s in. And not only some Supernovas, but even some Supernova LE editions. So that's great. It's wonderful to actually have inventory again. Really is. So things are starting to stabilize out. And like I said at the beginning, I realized I just haven't done a shotgun video in a while. And this was to hand, so hey, why not? Here's your look at a Benelli M2 LE edition, manufactured in 2021. So let me know what you think. M4, M2. I see pros and cons to both. I think each is kind of for its own purpose, but let me know what you think in the comments. And like I said at the beginning, if you please could like, share, and subscribe, that helps a lot. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out the link to the Patreon page. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.